And can I just start out by making a blanket statement that I think dyslexia can be such a gift. And I don't know the people watching this, their viewpoints on it, but unfortunately, I think it's seen as a real hindrance. And I'm sure there are things that are hard about it, which I know because I've been through it, but it can be such a gift. And I'm really proud of that. So yeah, I'm happy to share how I created these companies. I basically like to tell people that it started in the way back machine when I was in 5th grade. And I was pulled out of class. And I think she was a psychologist. She pulled me out of class and she started like giving me all these blocks and questions. And this was in, I don't know, 91. I'm 35 or 92, maybe. I was 5. I was really young. And I was confused and I had no idea. They were asking me all these questions. And it kind of then spiraled into 18 years of not feeling very smart. Now, I know that sounds like kind of like a drudgery statement, and I had a wonderful childhood. I hit the jackpot with parents. I went to good schools. It's like, I'm fine. So no one has to feel bad for me, but it was hard because I didn't feel smart because I would get taken out of class and I would get extra time because I needed it. Because as many people probably on this who watch this, my teachers would have to like hold a piece of paper under and over a line, move it one by one like that. We didn't have a machine yet. Maybe it existed, but we didn't have it. Or else it would be the wild, wild west with me reading content. And so the reason I started my companies, and I started my first company, which is called Remind.com, which I know you guys, I think either did or do use, and a lot of people probably use it on this call, is because it came out of a place of being very hurt. The emotion of it was feeling not smart. But the reason that I started it was because I had this teacher, her name is Whitefield, who just totally changed my life and really believed in me. And my mom was very involved in my education and she deeply believed in who I was. And I wanted every kid in the world or the country to have their Miss Whitefield because she really helped me. And so I started Remind and it ended up getting very big. And now I'm building my second company, which is called Omella, which I'm happy to talk about. I would say, though, that the drive and ambition, and I'm almost done with the spiel, but to start Remind came out of not the best emotional place. It came out of a place of being hurt. I wanted to prove to the world and prove to myself that I could do this because for so long I felt not smart sitting in this education system that, was built like this structural system that was built to kind of say like, hey, now you go here, now you go here, now you go here, and you need to be at this level by this time. And I just wasn't like that. And I wanted to prove to someone that I could do it. And so the drive for me to build Remind, because Remind has 30 million active users today, and it's very hard to build a company to that scale, came out of a not good place. I didn't know it at the time. And the drive to build my second company, now that I'm a little bit older and I've made all these mistakes, is not necessarily to prove to someone versus like I love to do it and I realize it is my gift. So it's more of a positive driver that is pushing me to make this Omella, this second company, big and impactful in the world.
Great. Can you say a little bit about Omella?
Sure. Let me first say why I'm doing it. The reason that I'm building this company, Omella, is because when I started my first company, Remind, and Remind is a messaging app. It makes it easy for teachers, students, and parents to talk in a safe way. I noticed that they kept trying to collect money. So a teacher would say, you owe $50 for a field trip. And mom and dad would put a check in Johnny's bag, walk it to school, hand it to the teacher. And then 30 other kids would do the same thing. Of course, 15 of them would forget to pay, or 18 of them would forget to sign the permission slip from Mrs. Jones or their parent. And I thought to myself, like, man, there has to be a better way to do this. And I actually started thinking about this in 2013 or 14. So I've been thinking about it for a while because I like helping teachers and educators. Just fast forward, that was the why. And so 2 or 3 years ago, my brother and I, who's my co-founder from Remind, started this company called Omella, Omella.com. And we essentially make it easy for mission-driven organizations. It could be a teacher, a micro school, a nonprofit, a PTA, a club. We even support small businesses. We make it really easy for them to collect anything from a $10,000 tuition payment to break it up into a monthly payment plan, to charge for classes. They could do donations. They could do ticket sales. They could do events. If a teacher wants to take a kid on a field trip, or I should say 50 students on a field trip, they could do that in a safe, compliant, and easy way. That was the first thing we built. But then we noticed that all of them would all have to use like Google Forms and PDFs to ask questions. Do you have allergies? Is mom and dad coming on the field trip? Do you agree to this thing? And they would use something like a separate service, but then the teacher or the educator or the nonprofit would have to do all this work to like combine that. And so what we built with Omella was a very powerful and simple form system that makes it easy to collect information and money. And then the last thing we did with that was add digital signatures. And so what I like to explain to my mom, she's 70, but she looks 50 and she's very healthy. She boxes still. I boxed with her a few weeks ago. She's awesome. Is to imagine if Venmo, GoFundMe, Google Forms, and DocuSign had a baby. It was very simple. And it was only for this mission-driven category. That's what we're building. And then the other thing that we figured out how to do is lower the credit card processing fee for this organization and save them an enormous amount of money. And so given that, we've started to grow very fast. Really in the last like 4 or 5 months, we've started to just kind of like the term hockey stick, and customers love it, which they're like the best sign is, you know, if I fill up this bottle of water, if there's a hole in it and everything leaks, we have bad retention. But because the product, you know, we've talked to thousands of customers, literally thousands, and we've listened a lot. When we fill up the bottle of water, no one leaves. They really love it, and it's working. So that is what we're doing now, and it's been really fun.
Great. And what kind of role do you have in the company?
So I'm the founder, I'm the co-founder and the CEO. I started it in partnership with my brother David, who leads product and operations and about 100 other things. But the things that I focus on have anything to do that touches or focus on a customer. I love talking to customers. I've spoken to 2,000 of them one-on-one, 500 of them before we wrote a line of code. And I have a very strong opinion on that. I know I'm talking a lot now, but usually I listen. I believe that, you know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I think it's important to really listen to their problems. And so what that equates to functionally is customer support. I answer every ticket one by one. Eventually, I won't be able to do that, but for as long as I can, I will. I help with product development, but more so supporting function. I'll work on sales. I work on raising capital if we need that. And you can kind of lump all that into telling stories. Like I like to tell the story of our customers and what we're building because I truly believe in it. And the reason I believe in it is because I believe that there's hundreds of thousands of people very similar to both of you, and I've known you since 2012, I think, who are doing very important work in their local communities, whether it's a teacher or a micro school or a PTA or even a basketball coach, that are very good at what they do, but spend too much time operating what I'll call a back office, collecting payments and tickets and like forms and digital signatures and waivers, and then like having to track all that stuff. And our vision is to help them focus on what they're gifted at and not do all that annoying stuff. So I focus on trying to be the lead servant for them. And then the other thing, of course, I do is recruiting. That's the highest leverage thing internally I can do is hire great people. And we do have very good people.
That's cool. And was there like a sign of this as being your strength, like you're a people person pretty much all your life long? I would think so, but you know.
So funny thing, Fernette, you'll appreciate this. So I thought that I was the world's most extreme extrovert, like, you know, the line where there's no such thing as a stranger to me. And then the pandemic happened and it forced me to be an introvert. And my wife was pregnant at the time. We now have a little boy, but my wife was pregnant and we were being very, very safe. And our company is also 100% remote, my second company. And I ended up actually liking it. So I think I'm a bit of a crossbreed between an extrovert and an introvert, if that exists, where I love meeting new people and learning and interacting and just kind of building this meaningful relationship. And I also need my internal me time. I don't know if that actually answers your question, but it surprised me. It doesn't answer your question, does it? What did you ask?
It's good. No, I'm just trying to figure out. A lot of times people want to know, like when they're early on, what was the sign that they were really good at something? And, you know, and this is the kind of thing where it's not like you get a grade in being talkative, or it's not like you, especially being a good listener, it might sound like it's a passive thing, but, actually it's a really good thing when you're dealing with people, whether it's like being a counselor, it's being customer service, or trying to be user design. There's a lot of dyslexics in user design because they can flip perspectives and get in other people's heads and see what their needs are, a different, sometimes it's heartfelt empathy and sometimes it's like cognitive empathy, where you're really in another person's mind and in their shoes. And so it's kind of nice to hear about like how that can present in other ways, and and how when people get out and they're trying to figure out what am I good at, what might be these little signs that I'm on the right track, or what are kind of like opportunities that might be good to see if this is like a good fit for me.
good question. So for me, it was throwing spaghetti at a wall and failing an enormous amount, which is basically starting a company or being an entrepreneur 101. Is like, I just got very dirty elbows because they scraped them so much. What that actually means is in 2000 and when did I start? I went to Michigan State. I studied agriculture, but I tried to get into 5 majors before that. Business school wouldn't let me in. Tried to do economics, but I failed miserably because I didn't understand the concept of price elasticity and supply and demand, which now I know is very important, but I just couldn't get it. Then I tried to get into marketing and I couldn't do that. And I was just getting my confidence was like, man, where's my place in the world? And then I ended up finding this program at Michigan State called Bailey Scholars, which everyone should check out and read about. It basically allows you to learn about anything you want with co-facilitators in a small classroom environment with 10 students. John wants to learn about kayaking. Amy wants to learn about how milk is made from a cow. I didn't know that. I'm from Chicago. I like growing up in the suburb, like Chicago suburb / city. And we went to a farm and saw a cow being milked and their udders. I was like, wow, talk about learning. Anyway. I was just interested in this thing of technology acting as a force multiplier. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but like I was like seeing Twitter come along and Facebook was just a thing. And I was texting all my friends on my then BlackBerry. I am dating myself, but we had just moved to an iPhone. And they gave me the opportunity to do an independent study, which means I created my own thing about learning about technology. I literally created my own syllabus and I don't know, I just went Googling and met people. Part of that was like, what is entrepreneurship? Like, what does starting a company mean? And so what I did at the time, and I'm going to be quiet in a second, but it's kind of an interesting story. I went on to Grand River at Michigan State, which if anyone been there, Barnes and Nobles, I don't think it exists anymore, but I went to the Barnes and Nobles and I looked at the business section and I picked up the book, How to Accounting for Dummies, because I thought if you're starting a company, you need to be an accountant. And oh boy, was I wrong. But I didn't know what to do. And so given that, like, let alone I couldn't even read the first chapter of that book because I was all over the place. Like, what do you do? And so I thought like, well, I'm kind of interested in starting this company thing. Like, I don't know, how do I do that? And so I thought, well, I could either just try to start one, but I have no idea how to do that. Or I could go talk to a bunch of people who do it. And so I literally went to the local coffee shop. At the time it was Big B Coffee. It's now a chain of, I think, 100 coffee shops. And I met the founder of Big B. And I was like, what do you do? And I was like, literally, what do you do when you wake up in the morning? How did you start this thing? And then I met a consultant and I was like, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I consult. I was like, what does that mean? Until this day, sometimes I don't know the answer to that, but I met all of these different people and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I wonder if I could do that. Translate. I started I guess this is my third company, but it doesn't really exist. I started my first company called Social Bonfire, which most humans on the planet don't know about, but it was basically a consulting company to help businesses figure out how to use social media. And there's a customer that says, great, I want to buy this. I'll pay you $150 an hour and I'll contract you out for $20, 20 hours a month. And inside when they said that, I was like, okay, that's like $4,000 or some crazy number. What? Why would you pay me that money? But of course I tried to keep a straight face and I delivered. And it kind of opened my eyes, and not only to money, because like my job was working at Kraft Foods, stocking cookies and crackers on Saturdays at 3 a.m. I did that. And I won't eat another Oreo cookie because of that. Also, you know, I'm older now and I try to eat a little more healthy, but that kind of sprung me into realizing this whole world exists. So it was exposure to knowing, but I had to put myself in this position of being uncomfortable and trying and failing a lot. And then the dominoes started to fall. It's like, oh, like I get this sense like where I'm good at talking to people and listening and being extremely empathetic. You two would know this way better than me because you have all the scientific research to prove dyslexia. But I think one of the things I'm gifted at, and there's tons that I'm very bad at, by the way, which I'm happy to talk about, is genuinely understanding and listening to what someone is seeing or what someone is saying and feeling. And I always think that people, there's what they say, and then there's what they say. I actually think that they say more with their body language than they do with the words that come out of their mouth. I have no idea if that's because I'm dyslexic or not. Maybe you know the research for that, but that's when I knew. I was like, oh, there's something here. And it started me on this path of just like wanting to just make an impact in the world so badly and solve this problem that I just refused to stop. So that is when it was around 2007 or 2006.
Cool. Very cool. Do you want to ask something, honey?
Yeah, I do. Also, just in terms of the empathy thing, in terms of the listening thing, I think that that's really, really good. You're hearing the words, but you're also putting together the facial expression, and this sort of holistic processing is something that many dyslexic people are really good at. And there actually is some recent research from UCSF, so back out in the Bay Area, that looked at dyslexic children and found that they were more emotionally responsive and
When they watch the different movies of people or stressful situations, they empathize more, and like there's sweat, like it was like they were really feeling it.
Yeah, they monitored the feeling of the characters on the screen and things better, and the ability to kind of put together all those pieces at once, I do think is a dyslexic strength. But I'm also really interested in the fact that your kind of acceleration time was when you moved from an environment that required you to just assimilate information, mostly in the form of print, even if it was read aloud print or whatever, to a time when you could actually question people, talk to people, learn from experience. We did a set of surveys about 7 or 8 years ago now with our dyslexic advantage community, and got 5,000 people to respond and compared dyslexic and non-dyslexic people. And there was just this huge difference between, I learn well by talking to other people, I learn well by going out and doing things, by experiencing things, or I learn better by reading about something in a book or sitting in a class and hearing a lecture. And I think that we see so many people where they have this talent for learning that they're never enabled to exercise because there's no opportunity for it in a class. You can't just sit and ask your teacher questions all day in most classrooms. It just doesn't work. And if you try to turn to the person next to you, you're just being disruptive when you really just want to get information from them. And we worked with all sorts of people. I mean, we've worked with people who grew up to be people with radio shows or television talk shows and things, that as children were punished for talking in class because they just wanted to ask questions all day. And can you think of any other things that now are big strengths for you besides this question and answer learning kind of thing that either were not particularly valued as a student or actually led to conflicts or problems in the traditional education setting? I mean, I don't want to put you on this spot, that kind of open-ended question, but if it's energy of a certain kind, or if it's focus, being or just
what did you look like in class?
I was a mess in a nice way. Let me give examples of that. Now, thank the Lord that I had a principal. God, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. She's such a nice woman. This was when I was in 5th grade. I was in trouble so much that I would literally be in her office every day. And she knew that I had these, like, I keep saying gifts, like I'm not Iron Man or anything like that, but like I had certain strengths in me, and she never got mad at me. And I would be excited about going to the principal's office because we would hang out. Holly Rosenson, that was her name. Holly Rosenson. And I would be in there all the time with my friend Ariel Grummet Morris, who also had the same type of like emotions and things that I was like. And so, number one, if I wasn't out running around and moving my body and exploring the world, at least before I had to sit down for 3 hours, I was a hot mess, number one. Number two, I spent a lot of time in there, and we would just like get to hang out and talk. Just zooming out for a second, broadly in the education system, I don't think that there is enough emphasis on whole person development versus functional skills. Like, it's important to know math, it's important to know the history of whatever, it's important to know science, but like what about what the student or the kid is passionate about and really cares about? And there's a movement right now going on, you may or may not be aware of it, but there's micro schools and pod schools and home schools and alternative learning schools that basically help students figure out what they love to do and help them explore that. I want to give one example. There's a school that Omella works with. It's called Zealous Academy, or Zealous Schools, in Colorado. And their main question when they start with a student is, what are you passionate about? And that is so far-fetched from the traditional system that I was in. And so like if you go to that school, like, oh, I'm really interested in kayaking, they build a whole curriculum around kayaking. And then it curtails probably to other things that they're passionate about. Because I do think part of the job of, well, I'm learning this actually. I'm a bit of a newbie as a parent. I only have an 18-month-old. My wife and I were just talking about this. We want our son, he's big, really into trucks right now. So I want to show him trucks left and right. But I also think part of my job is to try to expose him to things that he's never seen before, to at least make the decision for himself. So I don't know, I got in trouble a lot. And then the thing that was really helpful for me later in my life in high school was when everyone had office study hall where you're supposed to sit with 50 kids for an hour and not say a word. And by the way, no one studies. They just like sit there, and now they're probably on their phones, but at the time I would just doodle. It was crazy. It was a poor use of time. But because I had dyslexia, which actually I now appreciate, I had an IEP manager named Miss Whitefield, and it would be sometimes 1-on-1 or 1-on-3. She had literally 3 students in the classroom. And we made progress on the homework. But the biggest takeaway, and this is the second big trend that I deeply believe, is that the best teachers didn't teach me how to add, subtract, or write. They taught me how to be a good person. They built confidence in me. They trusted me. They respected me. They gave me space when I screwed up. And what was most valuable. It's a set of value systems in which they ingrained in me. That's important. That's arguably, I would argue, more important than whatever, learning who the 17th century Queen of Spain was. No, that's important too. Like, history is important. But like, those things have scaled throughout time and who I am. And so that was the second thing that was very helpful, is just having that time to be one-on-one, or not be so structured and focused where I had to sit down for an hour and a half and do some monotonous tasks that I didn't like. The last thing I'll say is monotony is sometimes important. It's important to do things that are hard. Like, I played football and that was very hard, and it built a lot of discipline in me, and I learned a lot from it. So I'm not saying monotony and difficult things, you should just kind of like go the easy route every time.
Yeah, that's great. I do have a question, because I like how you found out more by interviewing people. There's still kind of a leap to a software company. Was that you? Was it your brother? Was it both? Or did you hire people? I mean, how do you go from that idea and kind of figuring out how you start a business to doing a company that could get 30 million people?
Yeah, yes, and it was all of the above. So my brother didn't know how to code at the time. We got into this program called Imagine K-12, which is now gone, but it's now a part of Y Combinator, which is a really cool startup incubator. Think of an incubator as like when a baby's born, can't fend for itself. It gets feeding tubes and heat and all this stuff. It's as an analog, a startup doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have any capital. Like, they don't know what they're doing. And so we were in this incubator, and that was very helpful in teaching us what matters in starting a company. And the reason I'm telling you that is because my brother and I left Chicago. He had a full-time job. I had that other company, which we dissolved it all. He left everything. We just moved to a one-bedroom apartment where I slept on an air mattress in the living room because I'm the baby brother. And he locked himself in a room for 17 hours a day learning how to code. And now he'd be the same thing to tell you, like, he's not the best engineer. He's really good at many other things, product and data, but like, he's not the best engineer. But he just kind of found a way to do it, which is another reason I like starting things. Is like, there's like a wall behind you and you only can move forward. There is no other option. What are you going to do? Because when there's constraints, you find a way. And we found a way. And so he learned how to code. And as soon as we got some basic system up, then we hired someone who was better than us, which curtails to any type of leadership, in my opinion, which is you have to fire yourself from roles that you are not good at and hire someone better. So we have like a wonderful head of engineering. We have wonderful engineers. We had a great designer. My brother leads product. He's better at that than me. And I was okay with extracting myself and moving away and trusting people. We had to, by the way, because it reminded, when it started to take off after 2 years of hitting our head against the wall, not literally, but metaphorically, we were adding, 100,000 users a day after 5 months of launching a day. Like, it was insane growth. And so we had to find someone. Our first head of engineering ran a big engineering team at Skype, and he was wonderful. He was way better than we could have ever been.
Cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add? How are we doing for time?
Your video temporarily froze. I could still hear you though. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is there any last advice? Like, how about advice to parents and advice to kids?
Oh boy. You guys would probably have better advice. What would my advice be? Well, I think the parent, I think the biggest part was just caring. I'm a parent now. I don't know if my son does or doesn't have dyslexia, but my mom cared so deeply about my education, and she like conditionally believed in me. And that was like from day Aleph, meaning like day one. And I think that that was really important. Though, like a lot of times she didn't know how to solve the problem. She didn't know how to help, but she was just like believing so much. And that was super important. So when times are hard with parents, I hope they think just like my mom Elaine did. And then for kids, if there are kids listening to this, is like you should find whatever path you're excited about that you love. I happen to like starting companies for my career. Doesn't mean you have to, and nor do I suggest it, because it's really hard and it's like my gift. But maybe you want to be a soccer player, maybe you want to be a physicist, or maybe you want to be a mailman. I don't know, like, or a mail woman, like whatever excites you. I think you should just explore a bunch of things and throw a bunch of spaghetti at a wall. And if something kind of clicks and feels good, you should explore that more.
Fantastic.